Application program interfaces, or APIs, are really important, and it's something I'm particularly excited about. I guess APIs in their simplest form simply help connect systems together. I think historically, if you look at the way that we've connected our systems, it's often historically through point-to-point interfaces, which are inefficient, they're duplicative, they're slow and cumbersome. I think if you look at more modern architectures, APIs start to get really exciting. They start to connect systems in simple, efficient, replicatable ways, and that leads to efficiency, it leads to improvement, it leads to improvements for the customers. I think one of the things that we're seeing more recently as well is that historically APIs have helped connect internal systems. What we're seeing really excitingly now is that APIs are being used to connect our capabilities externally with the capabilities of others, and that's where you get creativity and you can harness the capability of a much larger group to do some really exciting things.
You know, people often say that APIs aren't new, and that's true. They've been around literally for decades. But in the past, they were primarily focused with integrating into operating systems and hardware components like keyboards and other systems. And they were very, very different and non-standardized. Every vendor had a different API protocol, and different businesses, like different payments companies and industries, had different standards right across the board. But with the advent of the internet, we're seeing a really significant standardization of these API protocols on things like SOAP and REST, which are enabling a much broader focus on application-to-application integration, or really beyond that, business-to-business integration. We're no longer just having programs or system components talk to one another. We're integrating entire businesses and business models, which is a big step forward. We see the holy grail of this as having our APIs consumed by other people. Anybody can create an API, and we're seeing that right across the industry. Great proliferation of very fine-grained services and completely new capabilities being built by the mutual consumption of these different APIs that are being delivered by different companies, which is taking us down paths that we never could have imagined before.
Open banking is a huge theme, and it's all about the future of banking. If we look, it's a multifaceted phrase and it's overloaded. It means different things from different lenses. If we look at it from the regulatory lens, which is key right now, we have multiple authorities now legislating and providing regulatory input on open banking. And there are three broad policies and reasons why they're doing that. The largest and the most significant is competition. The CMA wants to, in their words, tilt the playing field. And that means tilt the playing field of banking and banking services away from the major clearers who provide a whole suite of services to their customers, and tilt it towards a more competitive open market where many more third parties, not just challenger banks, but also third parties, application providers, software providers, aggregators can provide services directly to the customer. And so competition and driving competition is the key policy. The second policy is to improve and increase innovation. Through that process of opening up competition, it encourages more digital innovation within the financial markets, which they want to see, to make the UK and Europe as competitive as possible. And the third point, which is largely directed at the EU, is to consolidate and reinforce the concept of European Union. In that, in the payments world, for example, payments can be made transparently across the European Union rather than just within domestic borders. So this is about more competition, more innovation, and opening up borders to have transparent transactions. So that's the sort of regulatory lens. But if we look at what does that mean in the real world more broadly, It means an ecosystem where you and I as customers, where our corporate customers, where SMEs have more choice. It means that many more third parties can access their data, can access the banking infrastructure through API technology to provide services for them. This means that the traditional model today of you having a bank account with the bank probably for life, because we find that consumers particularly are quite resistant to change and find that quite a difficult process and also an emotional reaction to changing their bank account. It means that your relationship may be with a completely different provider, an app provider for example, and that app provider will then go out to the market to source the best possible product for you to meet your needs. And so through that approach, there's aggregating your requirements in one place, irrespective of who the provider is.
The business of banking is changing dramatically. Disruptive technologies are increasingly being placed in the hands of our customers and their behaviours are changing. And as their behaviours change, the business of banking is changing. So banks no longer own the end-to-end value chain, and every piece of what we do can now be provided by a non-bank service provider. So you read an awful lot in the press and in the media about the unbundling of financial services and how banking is becoming more modular. We talk an awful lot internally about a Lego brick analogy. So the business of banking is being broken into discrete Lego bricks, if you will. We believe that the future of financial services, the success of organisations such as our own, involves the bringing together of our Lego bricks with the Lego bricks of others, combining those in collaborative ways to do new and unique and insightful things that are valued and trusted by our customers. But to do that, we need to be both technically able and culturally willing to play in that open collaborative space moving forward. And the key to being technically able to play in the future of financial services is through the provision of APIs. APIs are the things that let us link our Lego bricks with the Lego bricks of others to do those creative things that are so important to the future success of this organisation.
We certainly are going to meet our regulatory obligations with APIs, but our motivations do go far beyond that. For us, it's going to become a complete differentiator in the marketplace. It's going to be how we retain customers and appeal to new customers as well.
Let's be candid here, we're being driven and the acceleration of open banking is happening because of the regulator. Not just the CMA, but also the Bank of England, Treasury, Financial Conduct Authority, European Union. So we are following and conforming with that. But we're also clear that API strategy is the way forward, and we can see that benefiting us internally as well as in the external market.
So our work on APIs is driven because we want to, and we recognise the need to work with APIs rather than simply because we're being told to. We need to go way beyond the regulatory minimums that are being mandated of us, and I guess ultimately our work on APIs we believe will be a key differentiator for us as a bank in a world where we know we need to be much more open, much more collaborative. We need to be at the vanguard, at the forefront of what our industry is doing around APIs, and if we can do that, then yes, we'll meet the regulatory minimum, but we need to do so much. We need to do so much more.
We're collaborating with other banks and other industry forums, such as Payments UK, Nesta, Open Banking Forum and others. And we're doing that so that as an industry we can agree common standards for the most basic fundamental capabilities that we will all use and that we need to agree on in order to interconnect amongst ourselves and with the fintech community. But we're also going to go beyond that. We will build capabilities that are unique to us, that build on these basic building blocks, and we will compete on that enhanced capability, not just reluctantly comply with the basics, but we're going to push hard on differentiation as well.
So APIs change the game in terms of how we connect with vendors and third parties. I think looking back historically, the way that we've engaged with third parties has tended to be reasonably traditional. It's the world of RFIs, it's the world of RFPs, it's job specifications and functional specifications, and then managing deviations from what it is that we set out at the beginning of the relationship. APIs turn that world on its head. It's less about anointing a single vendor and more about offering up our capabilities into an environment where we can work collaboratively with others to do some new and creative things, and that's what's really exciting.
When we begin to think about open innovation, we'll see that that's a completely different approach from what we've had in the past. In the past, our modus operandi was, we'll do it. We've got lots of people. We've got lots of smarts. We'll just do it all ourselves, right? And yes, we would go externally when we wanted to buy some software or get an application, but in general, we did everything ourselves. But with open innovation, it's entirely different. We're effectively opening our digital doors through APIs and inviting others to come and offer solutions to ourselves and also to our customers. And what we've come to see is, and this is a bit axiomatic and maybe obvious to some, but we hadn't really thought about this. But the truth is, there are more smarts out there than there are in here. And so by using open innovation and APIs, we can tap into all the smarts that are out there.
So one of the things that we've been experimenting with recently is the use of hackathons, running events where we expose our capabilities in a safe environment where we work with others, a mixture of external third parties to be creative and to use some of our APIs in new ways. Interestingly, one of the key things that we've learned is simply providing the capability, providing the safe environment, providing the sandpit in which to experiment, in and of itself generates the demand to work together. It really is a case of build it and they will come.
I'm really happy that we've been so prolific in running our hackathons across the UK, Ireland and India recently. We're doing it for a bunch of reasons. First, we're learning to work more effectively with Fintechs, which is very, very important. Secondly, we're getting great feedback on our API set that we're publishing, the Bluebank API, which we're using in the hackathons and amending based on the feedback from the Fintechs who are working with us. We're getting great ideas from the hackathons themselves. There are some amazingly creative ideas that are being taken through into real-world solutions already. And the thing is that we also get to place multiple bets. We get to very easily, with less cost, less risk and less management overhead, take multiple attempts at solving the same problem potentially and being able to choose the best one. But fundamentally, by putting this API out there, by testing it in the real world through hackathons, we get to establish the fact that if we build an API, the fintech leaders of this world will come to us.
So I think APIs have a key role to play both internally and externally. I think if you think about how we've grown as an organisation internally over recent times, our growth has tended to reflect two things. It's both reflected the growth and the way that the industry's evolved, and then secondly, it reflects how we've chosen to grow organically, whether that be through mergers and acquisitions and so on and so forth. The net result of both of those things is that when we look at our current technology environment, it's unsurprisingly complex. We have 50 shades of grey of every interface that you can imagine. We use every protocol, and many of you will recognise that leads to inefficiencies. It leads to a really complex technology environment. APIs provide us with the opportunity to tidy up, to simplify, to standardise lots of that internal complexity, and as we do so, that will dramatically reduce the cost of technology service provision. So at the same time as being applicable externally, APIs have tremendous benefit internally. Ultimately, I guess, as we look into the future, everything, whether it be internally or externally focused, every interface will be provided through some repeatable, programmable, standard API interface. And as we bring together external APIs and internal APIs, if we can do that in a really smart way, ultimately our customers are going to benefit tremendously, both from the lower cost of service provision and the higher quality services that we can provide when we work with others.
The other really exciting thing about APIs is that they're not just for external access and connecting to customers and connecting different businesses together. It's also going to reform the way we develop solutions inside the bank. Historically, we've had enormous complexity and variation in the way our systems connect to each other, and we've got a myriad different standards between them, and that introduces complexity and cost and slows us down. As we move towards a simple set of well-defined APIs that are discoverable throughout our ecosystem, it will completely reform the way we develop solutions internally as well.
But how do you change the culture of an organisation that's got 100,000 people in it? I mean, that's not easy, right? And there's various vectors in which we can work to do that. But one of the key ones we've really come to see is APIs can change that. Because with APIs, I get far greater visibility in what's going on in the different parts of the organisation. I don't need permission to go and access a capability or a service elsewhere. I just go and I find it and I can use it. And so that whole approach that was adopted by the tech industry, first of all and famously by Amazon with their API first strategy, it spread to Google. And now if you look at how tech is done, it's all API driven. So banks are becoming technology companies. And so we have wakened up, smelled the coffee, and recognized that we need to be API driven as well, both externally and internally.
So as the industry changes dramatically, we know that APIs become ever more important, and we know that APIs are the key that unlocks our ability to collaborate with third parties. And ultimately, as that world evolves, customers ultimately will be the ones that benefit the most from this. They will benefit from improved capability. They will benefit from greater choice. They'll benefit from reduced cost. Another thing that they'll benefit from as well is a faster clock speed and an improved rhythm in terms of how this capability kind of comes on stream. I think the use of APIs provides us with an ability to take historic application development life cycles, often measured in months and sometimes years, and turn that model on its head and build up or introduce services and capabilities, sometimes in months and even in weeks. And that's something that's particularly exciting to us and particularly exciting for our customers. So the world of APIs is super exciting, it's super important, and it's great that we're going to be in the middle of that moving forward.
The future of banking services are going to be quite different under the influence of the API economy. Customers are going to have a much richer set of choices. There's going to be more competition for customers. There'll be more innovative capability out there. We're also going to be able to develop solutions that are much more connected to different capabilities out there in the marketplace rather than just systems that reflect our own thinking. We're going to be able to pull talent and engineering and innovation capability out from the marketplace into our solution set much more easily than we could today. And the big thing is that everything's going to speed up. Our pace of design and innovation and development and getting to market is just going to be so much faster than it is today.
What I like to call the clock speed of the organisation. When I was younger, we used to have PCs and we would compare PCs based on the clock speed, how fast they computed, and nobody talks about it anymore. But when we think about the organisation, we ask the question, what is our clock speed? How fast can we drive through change? Because the speed of our change is one of our greatest challenges. And we don't have an empirical measure, but we would admit as a large bank in a regulated industry that our clock speed is slow. So how can we speed that up? We think that using APIs will help us speed up internally, and also by collaborating with Fintechs and innovators outside of the organisation, overall we can speed up the rate at which we change things.
One of the typical problems that very large, complex, highly regulated industries usually have is that they're slow to react and slow to innovate and slow to meet new market demands. And this is one of the most important things that the API economy and the API ecosystems internally are going to change dramatically. We are learning to speed up in the way we work with our use of Agile and automation and DevOps, and we're investing heavily in our internal engineering culture and practices right across the organisation. You know, we're gearing up with our digital and engineering services group to build our API gateways, their identity services and enablers, their connectivity into our core banking systems. They'll be working with the payments group and Payments UK on the PSD2 program. We've got innovation enablement occurring with our sandbox environments and our Blue Bank API, which we use in our hackathons. And we're building real-world payment systems with Ulster Bank and our Green Bank initiative. So it's a very rich internal ecosystem, and the capability uplift is already significant and is only going to accelerate dramatically. There's another great way of thinking about the evolution of APIs and the resulting API economy, Originally, we started by writing software for our employees to use inside the company, typically in the back office, as we called it then and still call it today. We then moved on to developing software for our customers to use in things like internet banking and mobile banking. And then we started developing internal software-based, API-based services for our internal developers to reuse throughout the organisation and get leverage from. Now, this fourth wave, we are delivering API-based software services to the external third-party market, which is going to give us much more leverage in our innovation and development agenda going forward.
What is innovation really? Now, it might surprise you when I say this, but this is what we believe. Innovation, in our context, in the context of the large enterprise, is not about the idea. It's not about that genius thought you had one breakfast or one evening when you're out for a meal or something like that. That's what it is in the normal scenario. But the problem we face is different, because we have literally hundreds and thousands of ideas that are generated by our own staff and also that are brought to us every day in life. The biggest challenge we have is the time it takes to get the idea from somebody's head into the hands of the customer. Imagine that as a conveyor belt. How long is that conveyor belt? The truth is, right now, that is just far too long. And what we want to do is to speed up that whole thing. And so innovation for us is about changing with speed within the enterprise with real pace and alacrity.
I'm also very excited about the opportunities for a cultural reboot of the technology organisation within this organisation and others. The emergence of the API ecosystem is going to democratise IT in many different ways. We're going to have rich capabilities, but available in much smaller, finer chunks, available for reuse at a much faster pace. We're going to have vastly improved communications between technical groups, both inside and outside the organisation. We've got much greater visibility about what's available in the form of our API catalogues and developer portals. There'll be far fewer islands or silos of knowledge and specialisation available. It's going to dramatically improve the ability for local teams to innovate beyond the boundaries of where they might previously have felt constrained in their ability to take new capability to market. We think APIs have absolutely massive appeal and are going to be massively relevant to the way we work going forward.
I think there's lots written in the media and in the press about new fintech startups and some of the newer banks around and how those are going to eat the lunch of a sort of incumbent such as ours. I have a slightly different view, actually. I believe that both us and some of these fintech startups have very complementary capabilities, and we need to think of ways of harnessing those. I think lots of the fintech startups will struggle with the size, the scale, the customer base that we have at the moment and trying to build that rapidly. Equally, we know that we need to be more agile, we need to be more responsive, we need to move at the same pace as some of these fintech startups. The answer lies in bringing those capabilities together in a much more collaborative way moving forward, fueled by APIs, rather than thinking that this is a black or white, us or them type scenario. The key to success lies in openness, collaboration, enabled by the use of APIs.
The start of the so-called neobanks and other fintech startups will certainly move into the market, and they'll certainly win some customers over time, and so they should as we become a more vibrant, more open, competitive banking market. But we will be able to compete quite effectively on capability, cost, usability, and very importantly, the trust and sustainability and dependability of us as a bank.
The biggest question we get, and I think the biggest challenge that we need to answer, is are we the bank? Are we going to lose customers? Are we going to lose business in this open world and allow our business to be taken away by third parties, but moreover lose that relationship and that direct contact with our customers? The answer to that question is simply yes. There is a threat. More competition means more challenges and more risk that we're going to lose business. And therefore, that strategy I spoke about, that ability to compete and be a participant in an open banking world, is key to the future of the bank. We have a lot to lose, but we also have a lot to gain. We can't rely on the fact that bank accounts are quite sticky and that customers tend to stay for life, if not for a very long period of time. Over time, that will change inevitably as new generations come through. So we have to really be on our mettle, I think, in terms of customer service. Be number one in customer service, trust and advocacy is going to be more important than ever before, and to make sure that our bank of brands remains significant in people's minds and that they associate our bank and our brands with safety, security, simplicity, and certainty around everything they do in their financial management.
I think one of the immediate concerns around the emerging API economy in financial services would be one of disintermediation, particularly for easily commoditizable services. But very quickly, we're going to build our capabilities beyond just the basic services, and we're going to start competing on our merits, on the capability of our solutions, how usable they are, how cool they are, and also, very importantly, the cost of them to the consumer, but also very, very, very importantly, the trust in us as an organisation.
So as we move into an environment where APIs become more commonplace, there are certain challenges that we need to carefully manage. In a world where external third parties can have access to our environment, we need to manage the perimeter technically to make sure that that the right and appropriate people are accessing our capabilities. Is just something that we need to work through technically. Second challenge is, as we develop our APIs, we need to make sure that we continue to develop a compelling digital interface is going to be massively important for us moving forward. And maybe a third challenge moving forward as we move into this API-led world is that we need to think carefully about the commercial propositions that wrap around our use of APIs and third parties. But frankly, those are all nice problems to have. I think my greatest risk, my greatest concern is if we were not active in this space. I don't want to be a dinosaur. Dinosaurs are ideally suited for a world that passed it by, and we can't afford to be one of those. We need to be at the forefront of API development and be the bank of APIs.
Is open banking a good thing? I think it has to be. It's the direction of travel of all industry. This isn't unique to financial services or banking, but an open approach for transparency of transaction is universal, and it's the right thing in a global economy. It will be good for our economy as the UK, and it will be good for customers once they get used to a different way of operating, because we know that competition drives innovation, it drives costs down, and it drives more choice ultimately for consumers and businesses. So yes, open banking is a good thing, but of course the current incumbents, and let's be clear here, RBS is an incumbent as a major clearer in the UK, as well as the card schemes, as well as other significant players who've enjoyed a market where the predominant proportion of the population and businesses use their services not just on a daily basis but on an hourly basis. That's up for grabs, in essence, and therefore the existing incumbents have more to lose and arguably less to gain, depending on how they prepare themselves for open banking, embrace open banking, and depending on their choices and the decisions they make around their strategy and the role they want to play.
So one of the things that's really exciting for us as well is that we recognise that we don't have a monopoly on the world's smarts and the world's smart people and smart capabilities. And one of the things that's really exciting for us is the ability to tap into the smarts that exist outside of the organisation. If we can combine our capabilities with the smart capabilities that sit outside, then that's really where the magic happens. If we can bring those together, enabled by APIs, then the creativity, the capabilities that we can create far exceed anything that we can do or provide internally by ourselves.